Cubs roster starting to take shape. You're starting to see guys come and go. One of those guys we talked about, we were shocked, many of us that have been around the organization for a long time, that the Cubs weren't able to find a spot on the 40-man roster for Yonathan Perlaza. Well, he's got a new team. Some guys that you are familiar with were non-tendered, so they're free agents. And some players like Justin Steele are working out contracts for 2024. A lot to talk about as free agency is heating up. Take Nola off the list of possible guys the Cubs could sign to help pitch. All that and more right here on the Cubs Baseball channel. If you're not part of our community, like and subscribe. Here's your invitation. We're going to talk some Cubs baseball. He's Chad Anderson, and I'm Mick Gillispie, and we both appreciate all you guys for hanging out with us here on the Cubs Baseball channel as we talk about Chicago Cubs and everything going on. And I know we've spent a lot of time keeping an eye out for Shohei Ohtani, and we're still waiting on that, Chad. We're not going to talk about that on this show. Because we're hearing like, oh, the Blue Jays are involved. He is not going to go to the Blue Jays. He's already been to the West Coast version of the Blue Jays. They're called the Angels, and he knows what that's all about. It's either the Cubs or the Dodgers, and I think that it's going to be the Dodgers unless the Cubs come in and make a Craig Counsell type swoop, which could possibly happen. And when that news comes out, we'll be here to talk about it. But let me change gears here. Because for those of you who know, I've been around the organization for a long time, and I know the talent that the Cubs have right now. And one of the guys who they weren't able to get on the 40-man roster became a free agent, and this guy just signed for $1 million to play in Korea for a team out there, Yonathan Perlaza. A lot of us thought for sure that the Cubs would add him to the 40-man. Instead, they ended up with Luis Vazquez, the shortstop, Perlaza, who had around 24, I think it was like 24, 25 home runs, 85 runs batted in, hit 284. Is going to go out there, make big money, and he's going to be a star player. I bet you that someday soon he'll be back. But I like this move for him, man. Instead of going somewhere else, and I guess he wasn't able to work a deal out to be on a major league roster, go into the minor leagues, said, forget that. I'm taking the money and I'm going out to Korea.
Well, he's done it, or other people have done it. They've gone and they've proven themselves overseas and then made their way back. Didn't Tauchman do that? I believe. I think Tauchman was one of those as well. Kind of worked his way back over to the major leagues. So not a bad move, deal, idea whatsoever. And yeah, he had some fantastic numbers for the Cubs, 23 home runs, I believe, in the minors last year. So yeah, I know you were shocked, Mick. You obviously know a lot of the players more in depth and deeper detail than I do a lot of times. But yeah, this is one that I think we were all kind of caught off guard. You and I kept texting back and forth that night where they had to solidify the 40-man, and you keep going. I haven't seen Perlaza. Me neither. I'm sitting here refreshing MLB trade rumors and other sources and everything. And it didn't pan out. But I like this move for him. I think it's a smart move, and it gives him a chance to kind of prove himself on a different stage, and then come back and take a look at what's available and take a shot, hopefully with the Cubs if there's room and if there's a need. Because I'm kind of like you. From what I've seen, read a few of the highlights, I definitely love the guy.
He's he's got some work to do, I guess, defensively, although I thought he was adequate. He's got a good arm, and he hits for power from both sides of the plate. He kind of a stocky build, and he's a clutch player. I know there's a log jam, but who knows why other teams didn't go and find a 40-man spot for him. And maybe they were like, hey, you're going to be on the 40-man, but you're going to play in the minor leagues. I don't know. But the guy's going to Korea, and he's going to make some money, so good for him, and we'll keep an eye on him. Some other guys that are Cub free agents now, or former Cubs, non-tendered players, some pitchers. and that would be Codi Heuer, Brandon Hughes, and then Ethan Roberts. So all of those guys are free agents. So when you get non-tendered, that means that you get to go out and find another team to play for. Hughes did a really good job a few years ago, but had the injury this season. Heuer's been a good player. Ethan Roberts came up through the minor leagues, really likable guy. All of those guys, though, dealt with injuries.
Yeah, and this is that time of year where you make decisions based on what's best for the club, and you hope it's the right decision. But then there's always going to be those situations where you hope you're not looking back and going, "Crap, what'd we do that for?" But yeah, 3 players there that the Cubs have elected to move on. But also if you keep looking at some of the other players and trying to make room, I mean, that's where the Cubs are kind of stuck. And going back to, they haven't made the first offseason move just yet. They've been more just cleaning up the roster and finding the spots and figuring out who's going where and moving the chess pieces all around the board. And you mentioned it, Aaron Nola sticking with the Philadelphia Phillies, signing a deal. I believe it was around 170 million that he got from the Phils. Can't remember. I think that's what I saw earlier today. But Aaron Nola getting that extension or a new contract with the Phillies. And so that's one piece off the board. And we talked about this, Mick. The Cubs, they have a lot of different pieces available, and they got a lot of talent in the minor leagues. They got a lot of young guys who are going to want to break through and get into the big leagues and play for Craig Counsell at Wrigley Field, which is still extremely weird to say, by the way, that they're gonna play for Craig Counsell at Wrigley Field. But the Cubs are trying to figure all that out, and we've talked about it sucks to trade pieces that are so filled with talent, but you have to do it, and because they can't all play, so you got to figure out who you're shuffling around. But then the Cubs ended up signing a 1-year deal. I was actually caught off guard by this one a little bit, that the Cubs ended up working out a 1-year deal with Patrick Wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
And all about the arbitration and what they were going through there. But that third base slot and the DH slot, that's one that's involved Madrigal, Christopher Morel, and we've kind of talked about who goes where and how do you slide pieces around and maneuver. But I don't know. Were you shocked at the Wisdom deal?
Well, I mean, I think that you don't want to go to arbitration with him, so you make a deal. He's a power bat off the bench. When he gets hot, he hits a lot of home runs, but he's a very one-dimensional player to me, and that's power. I don't like his glove in the field at all. It's like he just doesn't have a lot of finesse in his game. But, teams like to have a guy with power. I think that eventually he's going to be one of those players who's going to lose his job to one of these young guys coming up, and you're going to see players like him and Tachman and Masterboni. Those guys are going to fall off because the young guys are going to be there and they're going to take those spots. And that's what you want in a healthy organization, players that can come in and make a difference. The Cubs made pre-tender offers to 6 arbitration-eligible players, right? Adbert Alzolay, Mark Leiter Jr., Nick Madrigal, you mentioned him, Julian Merriweather, Justin Steele, and Mike Tachman. And then they'll have to have those deals done by January 12th. And I don't think you're allowed to even agree on the deal until then, right? And then you got January 12th, you exchange figures, right? And then if you agree, you move on, and if you don't, then you move to arbitration. Teams hate going to arbitration, and they will hold it against you. If you go to arbitration, there's a good chance that there's going to be some hard feelings moving forward. Believe it or not. And I'm going to tell you, I'm going to tell you this. I don't want to get into this too much, but there was a guy that Cubs fans loved, went to arbitration and got traded. And I think one of the reasons he got traded was because because he went to arbitration. Yeah, teams don't like doing the arbitration thing.
So what's your take on that with I remember let's take a guy like Chris Bryant. Like when you got superstars and no offense to these guys. I'm not trying to downplay Talkman and
Right.
Merriweather and Leiter and some of these guys. But I mean, let's just face it, there's different tiers of athletes in Major League Baseball and different tiers of how good a player is. Do you think that still holds true even when they're more superstar level on the arbitration piece?
Well, I think what you do is you pay them. Like when you have those kind of star players, there's a basically like a book that's like, hey, this is what a guy that does this in this position gets paid, and you just take care of them. And then everybody's happy. I mean, I don't think the team's over there trying to rip the players off.
Because that would be my point. It's kind of a flipped script if it's the superstar, right? Because the superstar could get pissed at you and say, well, when it comes time to re-sign, I'm going to remember this and kind of what happened and what we went through on that side. But kind of interesting. Wisdom, just real quick, just for the quick statistic junk, the minutia. He played third base, first base, DH, outfield, or I'm sorry, left field, right field, and second base this year. So he only played one game at second base. I remember it against Milwaukee and how frustrated I was. It was either Milwaukee or Atlanta. It was there at the very end of the year, but I believe it was Milwaukee. So somewhat versatile, but I agree with you. He's definitely more of a piece that is there for the power bat. And then when you put him in on defense, it's more like you put him in more because you have to, not because you're excited about it.
Yeah, right. And I think that's, kind of like where we're at right now. They'll get those deals done, and I think everyone will be happy and just sit back. And we're seeing a lot of trades around baseball. Kyle Wright and Mike Soroka traded by the Atlanta Braves. I thought that was really interesting. The Braves are a good organization. They're one of the best. And they're one of the best at self-evaluating their talent and knowing when it's time to, to basically, cut bait and go or stay, right? And by making those moves, right? I mean, like those are two of their once top pitchers. I was shocked by both of those trades.
How about the Braves? I think they got confused, and instead of a 40-man roster, they just needed a 28-man roster or something. They traded half of Atlanta and a third of Gwinnett for the White Sox. The White Sox.
Aaron Bummer.
Yeah, the White Sox now have a 50-man roster, I think. So, the Braves have been extremely active, and the Braves are in that spot right now, Mick, where they won the World Series in 21. They were I believe the number 1 seed in the National League in 22. If they weren't, they were the 2 seed.
Right.
23, they were the 1 seed and in all of baseball. And the Atlanta Braves got bounced by the Phillies in the divisional round both times. So I think the Braves are almost like the Cubs may have been 6 years-ish ago, where you're loaded, but you're not winning. And you're not even getting the Cubs got to the LCS for a few years there in a row. But it's like I kind of wonder what the Braves are doing, if there's some sort of panic settling in there where, hey, we got to make these moves and make them quick and patch things up because this is our window.
Well, I mean, maybe. That's a good point. I don't know. But they knew when it was time to move Freddie Freeman and get Matt Olson. And it was a big deal. And so they're an organization that's I don't want to say they're small market, but they're definitely not a major market in baseball.
Well, that's what's weird. They're major market in the sense of population size.
Right.
But nobody talks about the Braves anymore like they did 30 years ago when they were on TBS every day.
Yeah, right.
Like that, the Braves were a big time team then. But you're right. Now they're a huge population area, but they're not what they were from a nationwide brand standpoint.
Yeah. And maybe they feel like, maybe for them, it's those deals where, hey, we're kind of happy with what we got in replace of those guys, or maybe I don't know. I mean, I don't know what they have in their minor league system, but the fact that they had so many injuries right at the end of the year cost them, which was the best team in baseball all year long. And then the other thing too, and I mean, we really haven't talked about it a whole lot on here because the Cubs were out of it. But the way that the playoffs were benefited the teams that had to play in the first round, and they, all those 100-win teams, got knocked out, and it was almost better to have that extra week instead, because you got this big lead anyway, and you're resting people, and then you have time off, and the other teams are coming in hard. And I don't know. I mean, some of you guys, I had a guy jump in the comment section, and he's like, well, if those 100-team wins would have came in and won, then we wouldn't be talking about this. They need to play better baseball. And I agree, but I just know, in the course of playing, you're used to playing every day. Taking time off does change the dynamic of the feel of the season. So I don't know how that's going to kind of look in the future, but right now they're not changing anything. And the Braves are trying to make some adjustments, and the Cubs haven't been in on any of those trades. But I would not be surprised. I'm going to tell you guys this. Don't be surprised if you don't wake up and the Cubs haven't made a blockbuster trade. And maybe it's after they figure out if they're getting Ohtani or not. And I talked about it. I think that the fact that Cody Bellinger is represented by Scott Boras definitely muddies the water for the Cubs and their desire to deal with that guy that comes in and he saw the stupid rhymes and everything, He's got to be one of the worst things that's happened to baseball in my life.
Do you think the Cubs prefer to deal with all the free agents first and then look at doing trades? Or do you think they don't care which happens first?
I think you got to wait if you're the Cubs.
But do you go after free agents first and then sit back and go, okay, the free agents we wanted are kind of gone, or it's settled, or we know where we stand. Now we do trades? Or do you do trades first, or do you care?
I'm saying
the
you
Ohtani
wait
stuff. Yeah, the free agency is what seems to be going hard right now.
Yeah, and because if you get Ohtani, then you're still going to need another pitcher.
Yeah,
waiting on him because he can't pitch next year.
Right.
But you got the left-handed bat, right? You don't either. Christopher Morel has to learn how to play a position every day, or you trade him. And my thought would be they probably trade him, right? So I think Morel becomes expendable if you get Ohtani, because he's your DH, plain and simple. And then all of a sudden your lineup becomes a very formidable lineup. I mean, think about having him in the lineup every day. I mean, crazy, right?
Yeah.
We all want to see Bellinger come back. And I'm not saying that it won't happen, but I think that if the Cubs are going to spend that kind of money, they'd probably rather spend it on the guy that's won MVP back-to-back years and then brings in this enormous fan base from Japan.
That's the thing is, I want everybody to remember, just because the Cubs, whatever number you see, Ohtani is one of the few players that you're going to see the return from the Japanese fan base, from the merchandise, the marquee subscriptions, the attendance, everything is going to go nuts. So Ohtani, in a sense, may actually end up being cheaper if there's such a thing, than signing somebody else, even like a Bellinger. I mean, I love Cody. He did a great job, and I think he'll do great. But Ohtani could actually net come out to be a better deal than what you end up spending on Cody.
Right. And maybe there's some of these other stars from Japan that are like, you know what, man, I'm going to play for the Cubs.
True.
You got him and Seiya. He's going to make Seiya better. I love the idea of the Cubs being the American Japanese team.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm telling you, man, I love Japanese baseball. I love their culture. You talk about a people that respect the game and respect each other and play hard and appreciate what it takes to get out there and be a good team player. They're amazing. I love them. I love the way that I just love everything about the Japanese baseball culture. So it would be cool to see if they get him. I don't want to get too excited because who knows what's going to happen. But the minute that it happens, come right here because you'll know what I think, because we're going to be on there, win or lose.
Yeah, right. All
right, brother. Well, good job today. We will drop a show for you guys tomorrow unless something breaks, and we'll pop on here. But continue to tell people about it. Share the channel if you will. Share the show. I love you guys for doing that. You've been awesome. and go Cubs.